Hello, I'm Paul Challenger. Like many, I've read some Alan Wilson and Barham Blackett books, and those of their collaborators, in which they mention the tombs, windows and carvings at Landaff Cathedral in Cardiff. So I thought I'd take a look. The guidebook says very little about any period before the 6th century, but it is believed there was a church on this site from 150 AD. Of course, it's the early centuries that we are most interested in. Here we see a photo of the cathedral as it stands today, taken from the guidebook. And the actual location of the cathedral reveals its antiquity, as the site is on the flat below a hill near water, which is the River Taff. And later British cathedrals were built on higher ground so that the cathedral could be seen from miles around. Unless, of course, they were on the coast where they were kept on low land, so to avoid the Vikings seeing them and raiding. Let's take a look inside. Apologies for the shakiness of the video. I didn't use the correct viewfinder. It's an impressive sight when you open that door. And what strikes you straight away, right in the center, is that modern archway and statuette holding up the roof there. It's needed because during the Second World War, a parachute mine dropped by the Luftwaffe landed in the graveyard just outside that wall on the right. As a result of the blast, massive refurbishment was required. And in fact, Landaff Cathedral became the second most damaged cathedral in Britain during the Second World War. Guidebook details many of the repairs and refurbishments that took place throughout the years. The Normans started a lot of refurbishment from 1120 AD, building in stone, but there were renovations also in the 12th and 13th centuries and in subsequent centuries. It costs £1,500 per day to maintain and run the cathedral services. But with inflation running at the rate it currently is, that figure is probably out of date. Our interest today is in these stained glass windows and some of the older tombs, little remains of early windows due to the bomb and restorations. Wilson and Blackett say that the Victorians could see the way the language and history of the Cymry was under threat and encoded ancient Cymric history in the cathedral. The windows depicting Arthur and Tudric are in the same style as the nearby Saints windows installed by Morrison Company in 1869. So whilst the guidebook doesn't say these windows were installed in 1869, they look as if they were. And when you see the snippets of history recorded in the surviving glass, you have to wonder what information the Victorians did record in those lost windows. Stories of Arthur II and Battle of Badon, etc., were taught in Welsh schools as historical fact until the 20th century, well known to the Victorians. So in this window, we see reference to one of Arthur II's most famed battles, Mons Badones, Battle of Badon. Now, I saw a TV program recently about medieval battle reenactors. And one guy said, "Today we are reenacting Arthur's Battle of Badon, but no one knows where the battle took place." And that's, that's the orthodox viewpoint. But if you open a map of South Wales, you will easily find Mynydd Badon just above the Severn estuary between Tondy and Maesteg. And if you go there, you'll find burial mounds and place names such as Lower Battlefield Farm and Field of the White Tents, obviously in Welsh. Keith Price of Facebook, Britain's Hidden History Group, has created a stunning must-see video on this battle, saying it was actually a campaign of maybe 5 major battles across a trail from Badon up through Hirwaun, down to Pontypridd, and over to Rwsaeson. And that translates as the slope of Saxons, where the Britons finally destroyed the invading army. Arthur is said to have raised the true cross above the British army at least twice, and is depicted with a cross over his shoulder in this stained glass window. He could have displayed any old wooden cross, but would that have really roused the spirits of the Britons? It is believed he raised the true cross, the lump of wood that Helen of the Cross, mother of Emperor Constantine, brought back from her walkabout tour of Palestine, which Wilson and Blackett say is hidden in a cave at Nevern near Newport. So whatever that wood is, it's in behind a false wall in a cave in West Wales. The cave is still walled up with its pilgrim cross carved above the cave entrance in the rock face and in the stone walling, acting as a seal. In this window we see Tudric, father of Meurig and grandfather of Arthur II. He is detailed in the Landaff Charters, a large book held in the Library of Wales in Aberystwyth. And in that book, the aged and infirm king who had retired to Tintern as Saint Theodoric was mortally wounded in a battle with the Saxons, who had a raiding party whom he tried to prevent from leaving Wales with their loot at Tintern Ford. The king is said to have seen an angel, depicted in the lower part of the window, who told him he would die in a battle from a blow to the head. He was taken in a cart drawn by stags from Tintern southward to the estuary, as he wanted to be buried on the Isle of Avalon. But they got as far as Mathen, where the king died, the saint died. And then they took him no further and actually buried him where he died at Mathen Well. A church was erected at the place, and there were 2 openings of the tomb where the skeletal remains showed injuries to the skull, adding weight to the written record. So there we have Arthur II, and now we're over to the tomb of Meurig. This tomb is believed to be Meurig, who died circa AD 570, the son of Tudric, the father of Arthur II. Thank you to Caleb Howells on Britain's Hidden History Facebook group for saying so. Maybe it has a skeleton carved as its effigy, due to the king having been excommunicated for a couple of years by the church for the murder of a rival. It seems if you wear a yoke of penance, pay a few bob, and say you're sorry, the king can even be forgiven for murder. This is the tomb of St. Duffrig, also known as Dubricius, with the figure of Christ rising from his own tomb, looking down upon the effigy of St. Duffrig. And there he is in the roof of the tomb. St. Duffrig's remains had originally been buried at Ynys Enlli, known in English as Bardsey, in northwest Wales, which translates as the Island of Saints. The remains were brought to Llandaff by Bishop Urban in 1120 AD. And let's be fair, you have to have the bones of saints in your cathedral to attract pilgrims and their money. Duffrig was a cousin of Arthur II and was the bishop who anointed him King of Caerleon. This is the tomb of St. Teilo. The effigy dates from the 13th century, but obviously St. Teilo was of the 6th century, unless it was St. Teilo of the 5th century. This tomb was opened in the Victorian restoration of the cathedral, and an inscription dated 1736 was found, which recorded that the tomb contained a pastoral staff, which fell to dust when they tried to pick it up, and also a chalice. We are interested in Teilo because of the book attributed to either St. Teilo of the 5th century or St. Teilo of the 6th century, both of whom are associated with Cymric bishops of Landaff Cathedral. The book was held in Landaff Cathedral for many centuries, and a letter dated 1687 recorded it as being there. Sometime after 1687, it mysteriously vanished, and later resurfaced equally inexplicably in Lichfield Cathedral over in England. The Welsh story is simple. It was robbed. We're interested because the custom and practice in ancient times was to write important grants, charters, and genealogies in the margins, headers, and footers of such holy books, hence providing great evidence for us to follow. Moving on, we have the three faces in one carving, and my filming and shakiness becomes very evident. And whichever angle you look at that three faces, out of the four eyes, you only really get to see three clearly. Here's what Adrian Gilbert said about it when he collaborated with Wilson and Blackett in the book, The Holy Kingdom. Well above eye height, protruding from one of the walls, was a curious sculpted head. It had three faces, cleverly juxtaposed on three sides in such a way that they shared eyes. There was something very powerful about this head, whose eyes looked in all directions, and which clearly represented the Holy Trinity. Alan told me that there were once many of these heads in Welsh churches, but as they were later regarded as pagan and prohibited by Rome, the rest have long since been removed and destroyed. We were lucky this one example has survived to give us some insight into the ways of thinking of the early Christians, whose ideas were clearly influenced by Gnosticism. So that was a very short journey in the inside of Landaff Cathedral. I hope you can make it there one day and to look at these particular tombs and windows for yourself. Thank you very much for listening.